Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Many people believe that learning English is a bad experience. Many people also believe that learning English is fraught with difficulties and problems. My question for you today is, what do you believe about the learning process? I'm asking this question because what you believe about learning a language is ultimately going to determine how successful you are. If you really believe that it's impossible for you to learn because you're a logical person instead of a creative one, or if you believe that it's impossible for you to learn because you're better with mathematics than you are with languages, then you simply will fail. What do you believe? Now, let's just go over a few of the ideas that I've been hearing recently. These things often appear as barriers and really stop people moving forward. One of them is, I have no time. I would love to learn English, but time is not on my side. It's understandable. We're all very busy people. But if you really wanted to do it, you would make time. For example, if you play sport or if you go to the gym, maybe you don't always want to do those things either, but you enjoy them, so you make time to do them. And so it is with English. Another might be this idea that some people are really successful with languages, and if only I was like Bob, my friend. Bob can learn languages like there's no tomorrow, as we say in English. That means you get enthusiastic about something. It's like tomorrow is not coming. You're doing it so urgently and also enthusiastically. If only I was like Bob. He learns English like there's no tomorrow. He speaks 3 or 4 languages. If only I was like him. And then there's the appearance of the boss. What if the boss asks me to make that English telephone call? What does the boss really think about my English? What if he knew that it was so bad? There's other excuses come up as well. Oh, I just couldn't find a good teacher. My last teacher was a bad one. I haven't been able to find the right book yet. This book was bad. It was too difficult. This book was bad because it was too easy. Now, in all of these excuses, what do they all have in common? What do all of these reasons that I've just mentioned, what do they all have in common? What they all have in common is you've believed something about the situation. And as I mentioned about the person who goes to the gym and maybe doesn't enjoy it, but does it anyway, it doesn't necessarily make it bad. But if you have a label or a belief about why you can't do something, it will come back and it will find you and it will stop you because it's something that you believe. Now, as a teacher, what I've discovered is that many of you think that when you're learning English, it's a little bit like looking at a compass. You know the compass which points north, and it also has east, south, and west on it. It's like that. Many of you think that there's some kind of good power in operation and some kind of bad power. And that on any given day of your learning, it can be good or bad, depending on the book, depending on the teacher, depending on the lesson, depending on your day at work. And there always seems to be these two polarities. And you make those polarities, and then you put your English in between them. And then you declare your English bad, and then you tell me, oh, my English is so bad, it's terrible. And I say, how did you work that out? You've just told me in beautiful English how bad your English is. So why do you think it's so bad? And then comes the excuse. I tried to explain, but you've set up the barriers. You've set up the polarities of good and bad. If you think of it as a sports match, you've set up the goalposts. And then if you kick the ball the wrong way, you're saying, oh, I didn't manage to do it today. Well, change the goalposts. Make the goalposts wider. Change your thinking about it so it's not so bad. You know, communication in English, as with any language, creates an idea. Whenever you say something or whenever you communicate something, it stamps itself on your mind. It imprints itself as an idea. And once you've repeated that idea to somebody else, it travels. So if you believe, for example, that learning English is a bad idea, you tell your friends that, they tell their friends, it can spread quicker than any virus. You need to be very clear on your learning, and you also need to have some kind of positive belief that you can succeed. Now, I'm not suggesting that you run away and sit on a mountain for 3 months meditating on how the world is a good place, because frankly, the moment you come back and open up a newspaper, you'd realize that it really isn't, okay? But what I am saying is that you need to get to a middle place where your English learning is neither good nor bad, it's just something which is. Now, there's all kinds of ways you can do that, but personally, I find reframing the learning process into something which is fairly positive and workable helps me to get away from this idea that some people are good at English and some people aren't. Because this kind of belief system which wavers between these two polarities is never going to be successful. So how do we do that then? Well, it involves looking a little bit deeper inside your head and also perhaps letting go of your ego a little bit. Because if you think that your mind is like a little box and you have to keep pouring in words in order to remember anything, then you seal the lid shut, you'll be forever with this idea of the book and the teacher. But by reframing that, you can easily accept the idea that by communicating, you're using words that you're hearing and ultimately saying. Let's just compare those two things for a minute, okay? So one idea is that your mind is a little box and you're pouring in words at every moment. But you're not using all of them, and half of them you'll probably forget. You can read Harry Potter for 30 minutes, write down all the words you didn't know, but in reality, are you ever going to use the word witch or wizard in your daily speech? Well, probably not. And so most of those words aren't used, and your learning becomes a little bit stuck because it only involves you, which is where the ego comes in, because you think, oh, I've done this for today, I'm happy. Maybe so, but in the long term, are you going to remember any of those? Do all the exercises you want, but I guarantee you, if you don't use them, they'll be gone. And the other way I was mentioning is if you see yourself as something where English flows through you and not into you, communication which you pick up, you then use. You speak it, you write it, and you broadcast it with another person. Now, if you don't have anyone to practice with, you can easily set up a blog on the internet. Or, if you don't want to do that, you can set up a system of leaving voice messages for people. There's apps, including italki, all over the internet where you can easily record yourself and ask for feedback. Now, in my first little story there, you can hear that everything begins and ends with you. And in the next idea, the more positive one I'm giving you, you don't see yourself as a box being filled with words. You see yourself more as something which English can travel through, something which you're reflecting rather than storing. Now, I do understand that's quite a frightening thing, but when you talk, especially when you're talking live with other people, it hits your mind in such a way that it allows you to use the vocabulary and grammar that you know. And that's really, really important. If you're not into speaking, then what you can do is write something and send it to someone, share it with them, write them a letter, for example. And it's the same effect. It's the same effect. Now, that's something which has helped me a lot over the years to reframe myself away from this idea that somehow I'm just a little box absorbing words into someone that doesn't absorb words exactly, but they kind of pass through me. I learn them, I use them, more words come, I use them with somebody else, and they pass over me. They pass through me. Okay? So, in the first example I gave, think of a person as being a solid object. His head is opened up and all these words are dropped in, and very soon he forgets them. But think of the second person, or the second example I'm referring to, as someone who's transparent. The words come in, he uses them, the words go. And in effect, he's communicated with a second person, which of course is also good for our mental health, and it affirms where we are with English. Another thing that I need to tell you is this idea that somehow language learning is good and bad. These two words are legacies which were given to us by previous belief systems, usually involving some kind of religious codes or some kind of belief in some kind of evil entity which has been passed to us through the generations. It's time to let that go. It's time to move on. There isn't a bad power there which somehow is going to snatch away your English. It doesn't work that way. If you can see your English as a garden which needs to be watered from time to time, but really is given away to other people. The flowers that grow in it are picked from the garden and given to others. If that doesn't happen, then the garden just dies. Think of a fruit tree. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a garden with an apple tree in it, or perhaps even something warmer. If you're living in a warmer climate, maybe you have a banana tree. What happens if you don't collect the fruit? The fruit rots. It falls to the ground, and then you have a really messy garden. So you take the bananas away. I'm sure you don't eat them all yourself. You give them to other people. It makes perfect sense. And then you don't have to think about, oh, will this tree produce more bananas for next year? You know it's just going to do it anyway. It's what the tree does. It's programmed to do that. The tree will give you fruits, unless, of course, something outside of the natural process happens. And so it is the very same with your English. If you try just to absorb all this stuff that you're getting and you're producing, nothing's going to happen. Your fruit isn't going to be shared with anyone. As a result, it dies, or the fruit lands in the garden and is of no use to anyone. However, if you choose to share your fruit with someone, then of course it's like a blessing for humanity. You will get back what you give out, because as more fruit appears on your tree, you'll have more things to give other people, and your English will become healthier. By using these metaphors, I really hope that it makes it clear what I'm trying to say. And that is, the most successful people who learn English are the ones who are not afraid to use it, and also are people who don't see English as being altogether good or bad when it's being learned. Let me just say that again, because I don't think I've made it clear. The people who view the English learning process as good or bad often set themselves up to fail, because they don't believe that the fruit is going to be there on the tree. From the very beginning, they believe that the tree is dead. I really hope that this metaphor has helped you a little bit with your English today. I'm not saying that you need to rush out to add more friends on Facebook or anything like that, but just to take a small step to decide either to send a short message to a teacher, and you're more than welcome to send a message to me on italki to say hello, or to try to get a language exchange partner that you can communicate with regularly. You don't have to be talking to them face to face. Remember, on systems like WhatsApp these days, you can easily leave voicemails for people. So if you get into the habit of doing that, then they'll correct you. If you really, really don't want to talk to anyone, talk to ChatGPT or talk to AI. If you ask it, it will correct your mistakes. But it would be preferable of course, to talk to someone. That's what languages are for. That's their purpose, to communicate with humanity, to help each other. You're supposed to be reflecting language, not holding on to it and declaring, this is how much I have, and this is how much I don't have. If I were you, just thinking about a daily practice, really try to change your opinion and get away from this good, bad language learning style, good book, bad book, good teacher, bad teacher. Because the problem is, once you start to see bad, it doesn't change. You begin to see more bad. And the way the media and the world gives us news at the moment, it's harder and harder to see good, especially in the winter when there's dark nights. And in these days of technology, when we don't actually talk to each other anyway. So, if I were you, I would really begin to focus on good experiences, people and things which bring you joy. Share what those things are, even if you only have a little bit of English to do it with. Because ultimately, as I've mentioned before, when you bring in your passion, it brings enthusiasm with it as well. And that's a very, very different thing from reading a dictionary and trying to learn every single word. We've all tried that, and we've all found that it just doesn't work. So, there we are. A few thoughts for you today. Thanks. See you all soon. Bye.